It is Sunday, the 16th of July, 2017. I'm in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, just starting up my alternative spiritual practice of protesting against Unitarian Universalist injustices, abuse, and hypocrisy here. Got a couple of people coming this way, so we'll let them see the signs. Unsafe sect, yes sir. All kinds of reasons, but it includes clergy sex abuse. That's the illusion there, obviously. Oh. Okay. Little play on words. So this gentleman saw my unsafe sect picket sign and remarked on it. And then the woman he was walking with, asked, what kind of problems there were. And I said, well, a variety actually. But that it does include clergy sex abuse in terms of the overall Unitarian Universalist religious community. That's what my unsafe sect picket sign is addressed to, the whole Unitarian Universalist religious community, not just the Unitarian Church of Montreal, which may or may not have had some clergy sexual misconduct in its past. But the larger Unitarian Universalist religious community most certainly has had more than its fair share of clergy sexual misconduct. As far as I'm concerned, no less than 400 churches out of around 1,000 churches have definitely been affected by clergy sexual misconduct of one kind or another, according to a count done by a group of interim ministers some time ago. But most people recognize that that's actually, the minimum, and that it's, could be more like 2/3 of Unitarian Universalist congregations have been affected by clergy sexual misconduct of one kind or another, and that's actually in terms of I'd say where complaints have been filed. There's probably been clergy sexual misconduct of some kinds where complaints have never been filed. And I would say that if one went by the standards of what's considered to be clergy sexual misconduct today, which is any kind of sexualized contact between Unitarian Universalist ministers and their congregants, it's probable that pretty much every Unitarian Universalist congregation at some point in the 50-plus year history of the UUA has had at least some low-end clergy sexual misconduct, things like unwanted sexual comments, maybe unwanted pats on the rump and that sort of thing. So I'd say it's very probable that pretty much every Unitarian Universalist congregation at some point in its history since 1961 has actually had some kind of clergy sexual misconduct, even if it's not in the most serious forms of it. But then, the unsafe sect picket sign doesn't refer only to clergy sexual misconduct. It obviously alludes to that. It's a play on the term safe sect, unsafe sect, safe sect. I think you can see the connection there. But no, this picket sign refers to other unsafe aspects of Unitarian Universalism, or if not Unitarian Universalism, in terms of, what it claims to be, the Unitarian Universalist religious community as a whole, in terms of how it is not safe for various people as a result of various kinds of, abusive behavior by UUA clergy and UUA religious educators and UUA lay people. In my own experience, I've had considerable insults and defamation leveled at me. I've had other verbal and psychological, emotional abuse leveled at me. I've being physically assaulted on several occasions by Unitarian Universalists who aren't happy with my protest outside the Unitarian Church of Montreal, to say nothing of other places. I was, for instance, physically assaulted in Toronto some years ago when Canadian Unitarian was not happy about my protest against Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse outside the building where the Canadian Unitarian Council was having its annual general meeting. So yeah, there's all kinds of ways in which the Unitarian Universalist religious community is less than safe, and I'm by no means the only person who has been subjected to, harmful behavior on the part of Unitarian Universalists. There are many, many other people, some of whom have been, very seriously abused, sexually raped, molested, and so on, sexually assaulted in various ways. But there's been a certain amount of sexual abuse of children that the Unitarian Universalist Association has tried very hard to minimize, if not completely conceal. And they have yet to tell the whole truth about the child sex abuse that has been committed by Unitarian Universalist ministers, and they've certainly neither also told the full truth about just how many Unitarian Universalist ministers are guilty of various other less serious forms of sexual misconduct, but nonetheless fairly serious sexual misconduct, such as having affairs with the wives of congregants, or perhaps I should say having affairs with the partners of congregants, or having affairs with congregants who are married or unmarried or whatever. This is pretty serious stuff. It's not the worst clergy sexual misconduct. It's not outright rape. It's not forcible rape. It's not sexual abuse of children or minors. It's nonetheless comparatively serious clergy sexual misconduct, but it seems that the Unitarian Universalist religious community for decades never took it very seriously. So okay, so I got a nod from this woman going by. I thought for a second she was wearing a name tag up on her right shoulder, but I think it was actually a music player or something. But I thought she might actually be, possibly a Unitarian Universalist minister visiting the Unitarian Church of Montreal, because they often wear identifying nameplates. So I guess that's not the case here. Anyhow, we'll continue to circulate here. This is actually my first protest in July. I actually did not protest the two previous Sundays in July. The first Sunday in July I did not protest because I was literally out of town. I was essentially cat sitting for a friend of mine in the Laurentians, and it just wasn't practical to come in and protest and go back again. And then last Sunday the weather was kind of blah and rainy, and I figured, what the hell, I can give it another break. I actually protested every single Sunday since the first Sunday in January of this year, right up until the end of June. So the first 6 months of 2017, there was a protest outside the Unitarian Church on every single Sunday, and a few other days where there was special events happening. So very, very thorough, consistent weekly protest, right up until the beginning of July, where I took a little break. And I often do take a little break in the summer. Sometimes I even take the whole summer off, especially if I'm out of town, doing something. There's been some occasions where I've been not just out of town, but out of the country. But this year, because it's the 175th anniversary of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, I wanted to keep the pressure on and very consistent. So although it hadn't been my intention to protest absolutely every single Sunday of the first 6 months of the year, that ended up happening in any case. So I'm pretty happy with being so consistent from January to June. And I actually considered not protesting today. I actually considered sort of declaring a unilateral truce, a unilateral suspension of my protest for a couple of months. There's a new UUA president who was elected in late June. I believe it was June 24th when Reverend Susan Frederick Gray was elected as the new president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Bonjour! So I got a Metro section police car slowing down to have a look at the protest here. It's not really their prerogative to interfere in it, but the guy was obviously curious. And I would, since the police, showed up, although this is obviously not an intervention, I would like to say that I do believe Station 11 Police, that is the station which has jurisdiction for this area, have actually finally seemingly figured out that the best thing to do is just allow me to protest without interference. There's been literally dozens, if not hundreds, or at least the low, somewhere in the, I never counted them up, day by day, but over the almost 20-year span of this protest, certainly there's been dozens of interventions by SPVM police officers in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, including some arrests and tickets and so on. But they have diminished considerably since 2013. In 2013, there were 3 very foolish interventions, in my view, where SPVM police officers from Station 11 showed up, and the first thing they said to me after introducing themselves was, "You have to leave." They basically telling me that I had to end my protest and go away. And when I asked them why, they came up with all kinds of ridiculous pretexts, essentially bullshit reasons as to why I needed to leave. For instance, one police officer said, you can't protest in a bus stop zone. This is a translation from the French. He actually said, "Premièrement, vous êtes dans une zone d'autobus." So firstly, you're in a bus stop zone, so clearly saying, that you're not allowed to protest in a bus stop zone. There used to be a bus stop right here, like a full-on, this is now a point for letting off disabled people, but there used to be a full bus stop here, and where the bike lane is, there was, a bus stop zone going back a ways there. And of course, this police officer was parked right smack in the middle of it, which actually caused at least 2 STM buses to let passengers off away from the bus stop. In one case, they actually let the passenger off in the middle of the street, which you're not really supposed to do. So this guy was actually causing more bus zone problems than I ever was. I was just walking back and forth with picket signs in an area that is indeed a bus stop zone. He also said I couldn't have freestanding picket signs like the one that just fell down. Again, this is bullshit. I have every right to have a few freestanding picket signs. So, this is just, bullshit pretext for trying to shut down my protest. And another police officer arrived. Actually, as I was about to leave, it was after 11 o'clock, and I was going to leave anyway. And he said, you have to leave. And I said, well, since I'm leaving anyway, I will leave. But, and then we got into a discussion about, what my rights were and the right to protest and this and that. And he came back with some truly ludicrous statements. Again, this was all in French, but, he said, you can protest, but not with those. And he's pointing at my picket signs. In other words, he's saying, you can't use picket signs in a protest. Totally ludicrous. He suggested that I could wear a T-shirt with text on it, instead of picket signs, and just incredibly stupid stuff like that. By the way, all of these interactions are available to be viewed on YouTube. Just run a search on SPVM, Unitarian Church of Montreal, or I think even, SPVM Unitarian would find them. And then there was another intervention on Mother's Day of 2013. 2 female SPVM cops showed up on Mother's Day. perhaps quite appropriately. Again, they said I had to leave after introducing themselves. Well, actually, they asked, do you know why we're here? And I said, well, presumably because you received a complaint from the Unitarian Church of Montreal, And then, of course, they basically indicated I was correct and, that I had to leave. So when I asked them, why do I have to leave? They said, oh, because you're blocking circulation on the sidewalk. Now this is, again, ridiculous. Yes, I'm walking back and forth on the sidewalk, got a couple of picket signs, but I'm not actually blocking circulation. I step out of the way of people when I see them coming my way. I leave them plenty of room to walk by me. I don't in any way impede their ability to walk on the sidewalk. So again, this was just a bullshit pretext for forcing an end to my protest. We actually had quite a long discussion, and they were very insistent. They had to leave. They were threatening me with a big ticket, like $100 plus ticket if I didn't leave. And I said, fine, give me the ticket, I'll contest it. And I pointed out to them, that, at the time there was no bike lane, but, joggers regularly went by this area and skateboarders in the street. And they had told you, when I told them that I give room to people, I said, sometimes I step off the sidewalk into the road to let people pass. Sometimes I step back onto the grass. And they said, oh, no, you can't do that. You're not allowed to step into the road. It's illegal, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, there's skateboarders going by all the time. There's joggers going by all the time. I don't see you giving them tickets. So in the end, they decided to put me under surveillance. They were basically just looking for an opportunity to give me a ticket. They wanted to be able to say, well, this happened and, the protester was blocking the sidewalk, so we gave him a ticket. But of course, nothing happened. There was never any blocking of anyone, while they were watching me for a good, at least 10 minutes, maybe 15 or 20 or so. And then what happened is a jogger went by, just as I told him, I said, so I pointed to the jogger and said, why didn't you give her a ticket? And that's when they drove off.